One of the kids is in the driveway. He's shooting skeet with my rifle. He has your mother's eyes. I think he should give them back. Good evening, good afternoon, good morning. That's a tribute to some of my favorite foursomes out there. How are you doing, colleagues around town and around the globe? I hope you're doing very well, because we're in that joyous season. It comes at the end of the year, and whole segments of the population behave like they haven't for the other 11 months of the year. But I don't want to sound like I'm judging. I know why you're here. You want to know the news behind the news that you hear every day. You want to hear it from people who dig deep. You know, as your lead investigator, I've been doing this for over a decade. But for the last couple of years, I've brought some of my champion reporters right here into the studio so you can hear them say in their own words and in their own voices what you need to hear. I'm going to start by introducing the investigators who came with me tonight. It is quite a collection, quite a collection. First one, stand up. Stan is a guy you probably know about even if you don't know anything about him. He's recently been named America's most popular snail mail fuel economy consultant by the readers of Emperor Worship Insider magazine, which I read all the time. He has studied patriarchy in the insect world, I think for several months already, and he appears currently with Mona Corona of Bologna on the Phlox Network News Weekly. Not only that, did I mention the name of the show? Living in Caves or Dorm Rooms as applicable. Anyway, he holds patents on a booster engine school board tuner and a chocolate galaxy lighting system, and he speaks Flemish with an equatorial accent. Of course, he has a book too. All of my investigators always have popular books. His current New York Times bestseller is Getting Lawyered Up for Squirrel Season. I know a lot of people are doing special things at squirrel season, but you told me that since you started working with Marina Colonna of Vargona, or whoever she is, that you have learned to speak another form of Flemish.
Yes, actually, when I was sitting at that little buffet in Pretoria, and actually I was working for the Floss News Network, that's actually where we go out and do charitable work with wildebeests. And so my dental credentials are also up to par. I did learn to manage speaking with a certain form of Flemish intonation.
And I suppose that gets you into nightclubs that the rest of us only hear about.
Yes, yes.
You don't even know where they are as such.
Yes, there's never been a velvet rope that didn't like my back.
I got to tell you, though, your book has really excited a lot of people. So, for example, on Lily Funk's Police Radio Roundup this last few days, they keep repeating it. It's so popular. They have an interview with you, you know, the whole subject of what drives stand-up. I think you used to be driving an old Jeep, as I remember.
Yes, yes. Actually, that was before the F-150. And then now that I have the pickup truck, it's the opportunity to do all the attorney work that I do pro bono with the Squirrel Reaction Network.
Boy, that is quite a set of credentials. Am I right? I want to introduce next an investigator that has never been with me in public before. I forget why, but June July introduced the first restrictive voting laws in Western movies in the early 1950s as a student at the soul-destroying College of Macroeconomics in Good Luck, New Hampshire, and later became an early advocate for proliferation of non-local food remedies in imaginary space travel. In recent years, July has become a spokesperson for the rehabilitation of both tigers and woods, and lectures on new approaches to self-extinction at the Carlson Tucker School of Smartphone Campaigns. You know, your book that is current, and it's several years old, but people are just learning to read where it's popular. It's called Producing Mood Music. No wonder I was confused. Mood music for Italian shoe store companies on a cheap xylophone. So you actually play a cheap xylophone.
Oh yeah, have you heard that? It's beautiful. Have you ever been shoe shopping and your mood is enhanced by the cheap xylophone, you know? So.
That does bring together some elements that are familiar. There's something about this book. Well, there's a couple of things about this book that are fascinating. For one thing, the chapter explaining non-local foods for space travel, I think every engineer should be reading that.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, let me tell you something about local foods in outer space, which is that it's kind of tough to find them, honestly. You're in outer space, so we had to get kind of an import-export thing going. Do you know, boss, you cannot get a decent patty melt on Venus?
I've been told that.
And I don't even want to talk about the unfortunate foodstuffs imported from Uranus. If you do get a nice meal, of course, you got the problem of you get it back into zero G, and it's just all over the joint. So, my startup company, Cronco, what we've been doing, I'm very proud of this, is we do have a line of fine products made specifically to convert your quality meal into a gravity-enhancing experience. Imagine the same delicious meatballs that you enjoy here on Earth, but with a core of harmless and highly effective lead.
Highly effective lead that's different than what they have at the gas station, though, I imagine.
A little bit. We do have some contracts.
Let me ask you something else. There's another chapter of your book in which you explain how you made a name for yourself. Now, I've seen a lot of commercials where people say, you're a person, not a number, but in your case, I understand you started out as a number.
Yeah, it's true, boss. When I was born, I was known as 183947. They used to call me 18 for short. And then it's true. I saw that commercial and I realized, hey, I am a person. I'm not a number. So, my folks had named me Miscellaneous, but I kind of preferred the name Mystery. It's got a little, I don't know what.
Je ne sais quoi?
Yeah, that's...
or something
That's
like
what I was looking for,
Je ne sais
yeah.
quoi, whatever. But...
nice broad. I went out with her a couple of times. She's...
You did?
Solid, yeah.
Okay,
She gets around.
I have to tell you, though, as I'm coming back to your book, which is so illuminating in many ways, you see here this little piece of information we got. June, July, investigated for efforts to boost sales of xylophones in rural areas near Denver. As I understand it, you say you've never been anywhere near Denver?
No. The name change was for personal reasons of a nature of which I could not disclose.
And I respect that, or at any rate, on this show I have to pretend that I respect that. So let me just move on. I have a third investigator with me, humanity. And Hugh is a recovering aquatic historian and a founder of the minor league biology cyber attack study group at Mount Lucy College in Sailor's Patio, Massachusetts. Interesting story. When he decorated his home in Saline Fishery, Utah, with some lights in 1931 in the holiday season, it started up the tradition that we see in just about every neighborhood in America these days. So he'll tell you if that's not enough, he'll explain more. Over the years, though, he has trained thousands of search dogs to find Egyptian relics near shopping malls in Florida and Louisiana, and he's taught many of them to operate small appliances, which leads me to his current bestseller, which is called Achieving Inner Peace with Small Appliance Restoration. Now, Hugh, the first thing I want to know is how you restore these small appliances. I mean, what kind of tweaking do you do with these small appliances?
Well, generally, it's actually an interesting story how I married aquatic history and small appliances. When we had that unfortunate accident with the toaster when my mother was in the bathroom with the toaster when I was younger. But leave that aside. For small appliance restoration, mostly I just polish the knobs.
Okay. As far as antiquities go, specifically these Egyptian artifacts that you're finding in Florida and Louisiana, I guess you don't have to sneak them back into the country if they're in Florida and Louisiana, but how did they get from Egypt? You know what I'm trying to say?
Of course, there was, ancient aliens are, of course, a real thing. So what the aliens would do is they had, again, an import-export business from outer space, is they would actually, they'd bring them through so they'd get no tariffs if the aliens brought the Egyptian artifacts in through Florida.
Okay. And these antiquities, I understand you date them in a different way than other, shall I say, archaeologists? I don't know.
Well, boss, at my age, dating antiquities has a whole separate meaning, but if you're referring to my revolutionary way of determining their actual date is what I use ultrasound noise combined with smell. And I have several patents on that device, and antiquities actually have both a unique sound signature and a unique odor.
Now, I don't want to jump to any conclusions that are unwarranted, but we have another slide here, Mr. Producer. Thank you. Hugh, you've been arrested for the theft of dozens of small appliances. Does that have something to do with your mechanical?
Well, like much of my brushes with the law, that's entirely, it's just a misunderstanding. And on top of that, guilty is such a Western concept. And I'm moving more towards a peaceful Eastern philosophy of life where guilt and not guilt, you can be guilty and not guilty simultaneously. A bit like Schrodinger's cat. He's dead and undead at the same time. You can be guilty and not guilty at the same time.
Well, I'm not going to open that box and see.
I like your style there, buddy. That's, I can appreciate that.
Okay, look, let's get to what's going on in the country. First of all, we've narrowly avoided one of those shutdowns that just about happened because those people in Congress, depending on who's running the show, somebody else who's not running the show is blaming them for everything that goes wrong, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So we nearly had a shutdown. First thing that would have happened, locking bathrooms up. This would be, I guess, in the national parks and whatever. The bathrooms are locked, and so they are telling people, or they were preparing to tell people, that they would have to go to the woods or somewhere.
You know, I hadn't heard that it was just going to be in the woods. I thought that we were speaking of more broadly across various things like the Pentagon. And I had some investments I was going to make, which included things like Crisco and slip and slide, so you could more efficiently get the employees in, even if the employer decided that these things were supposed to be verboten. You know, and this was going to be an opportunity, so I had New Mexicans coming in, but I mean the sort that come from Juarez, you know, like because they're just born and they come in by a coyote. Have you ever tried to unload a coyote? All the things that come with it, the Acme explosive devices, it's just...
I never thought of all of these implications until you told me that.
Did they come with the giant coil springs?
Yes.
That's one of my...
The coil springs and the black holes and... Yes, and the bird seed.
Okay.
And the meatballs with the...
Oh yeah, lead meatballs, anvils, all that.
So,
Real useful in outer space,
obviously it would have been good for business in one sense if they had shut down all the bathrooms. But another thing they were going to do, they were going to turn off all the traffic signals. Do you see that? Turn right at your own risk. Well, I can think of a lot of reasons why the country shouldn't turn right at its own risk right now, but
Well said, boss.
this is kind of superfluous because in Houston, for example, where we are headquartered, people don't pay attention to the traffic signals anyway. Something that really mattered to me, though, they were going to put the panda viewing program on the chopping block. I can't tell you how important the panda viewing program was, and as based on conversations with my investigators, they can't tell you why it was important either. But there was also going to be an interruption of the mail, and well, a lot of you probably think, well, so what?
Well, you know, given my expertise in the snail mail fuel economy, as we spoke of, I was tweeting Mr. Musk. You know, I said that I would assume his new vehicles, these autonomous trucks, you know, they need room for escargot space, right? So I said, hashtag escargot space, and he tweeted me back, escar no go space. Penis rocket go space.
Speaking of,
Well, he does,
not only
when you drive a Model S, isn't that you're essentially making the escargot? Is that?
Indeed.
It's
since we've mentioned Mr. Musk, he and Mr. Bezos, by the way, helped us avert a crisis by kicking in $250 each.
Is that 250 million, boss?
No, $250, which, of course, I mean, you could buy a lot of cigarettes there June, July.
Oh, for sure. You know, they sure owe me because they got a shipping backup on those lead meatballs, and I got I got people that waiting on those.
People waiting on those. You know, there was a secret provision that was enacted in the last days of the last presidency. You know, we don't like to call it by a particular name, but it appears that any of the Social Security checks that were not sent if we had had a shutdown would have been automatically deposited in the Trump 2024 campaign bank account. And I guess you didn't know that. But anyway, as usual, everything got kicked down the road when we had this crisis. And in a time period where crisis follows crisis, we had Uncle Joe Biden on the phone with a Zumba call with Mr. Putin about the Russian troop buildup. Most people, however, seem to have misunderstood what this troop buildup was, because the troop, that's T-R-O-U-P-E, the troop was a new company. We've got very competitive phone plans were given to this new troop, along with some great costumes because they were going out on tour. As a matter of fact, they called them Putin's footsies, this troupe, and they were going to perform at the Cornhusker Dog Festival in the Ukraine. So they were right on the border of the Ukraine, and a lot of people probably misunderstood why they were there.
That's right. With the buildup of security, that's what it was for. I didn't even put it together until now.
Yes.
I was just thinking about those footsies, though. You know, I haven't had a good one in a long time, but having a nice Cabernet in front of a cabaret of dancing cabinet ministers, you haven't lived until you've seen someone in a $10,000 Snuggie reciting the Russian national anthem.
And you know, it's going to be a beautiful event, too. Now, you know, Kronko's got a booth. I'm not trying to push my company here, but if you stop by, I'll see you personally, and I'll give you a nice pen and a koozie or something. We got some quality merch.
Speaking of that appearance in a beautiful Cornhusker ceremony, great dance moves were all the rage when Putin and Biden got together. And in fact, Mr. Putin did a Zumba on horseback. His horse, you may remember, is called Nuclear Trigger. That went down very well. And as a matter of fact, Mr. Biden and Mr. Putin were asked to appear on Dancing with the Chief Executives because the celebrities who were appearing previously were injured in a very weird Watusi accident. I don't think that any more detail has been released, and my investigators can't get to the bottom of that either, but we know there was something involving a Watusi. Now, what does that have to do with Biden's sinking popularity? That's a good question, but it's Biden's job numbers that are being talked about today, and I know 6 is in there, and 414 is in there. And
are you kidding me? That's my bingo card.
You need to take us all out for, what are they?
Kronko
tonight
meatball
after
sub.
the
It's
show.
delicious, delicious.
Yes.
Tends to
Listen.
sit a little heavy in the stomach. Though.
Yeah, a little bit. It's what we call filling. We like to
It's
just
just
call
for
it
the half-life.
satisfying. Yeah.
The half-life of the, well, anyway. They're saying this is a problem of inflation, but given the popularity of people like Ms. Boebert and Ms. Marjorie Taylor Greene, I think womenflation is one of the big problems that Biden is having now. And I understand, Hugh, that you have been studying.
My sources, as far as his numbers go, because the previous administration used irrational numbers. But the current administration, not only are they using rational numbers, they're using prime numbers in their reports. And of course, we know prime numbers go back all the way to the time of Euclid, and Gaussian lectured on them. But the interesting thing is Paul Garrett, who did a revolutionary 2015 simple proof of the prime number theorem, has been rewarded by the Biden administration. He's actually going to be undersecretary of the White House Gardening Unit. Interesting stuff.
Well, there's more here than meets the eye, as usual. Let me just say one more thing about the Biden situation right now, because even with sinking popularity and even with confronting autocrats and so forth, his Build Back Better is becoming such a popular phrase that other people are sort of improving on it. For example, Mr. Trump, who is obviously bitter, he is talking about building back bitter. Isn't that funny? And then Major League Baseball. We had a year where pitchers were doing very well. We already talked on this show about what they were hiding in their gloves. Well, Major League Baseball has decided they're going to build back batters. And if that weren't enough, plant butter is becoming very popular. When you go to the grocery store, now you have your choice of something that comes out of a milk cow and something that comes out of a plant. So the dairy industry execs are trying to fight back against plant butter by building back butter. So,
This works very well. Well, I have an initiative to which I wrote to the White House myself in ornithology in one of my numerous degrees, and I was looking for something that would benefit the Build Back Bird Feeder movement.
I told you it's a popular meme, isn't it? Let's talk about young tennis players and their intersection with elders in the Chinese Communist Party. How's that for an intro? Well, I'm talking, of course, about Ping Shuai, who claimed that she was sexually assaulted by the leader Zhang Gaoli. I think that's how it's pronounced. He's a funny guy, really. He says he loves to play ping pong pang in the nude after a hard day of enforcing draconian measures. And this is another thing that's been reported lately in the Hollywood Reporter. I don't know personally, but you do, don't you? Hollywood, or was it you? You know Hollywood.
Oh, of course. I'm real popular around that joint. So, I
I'm
do have a
talking
film production.
No, I
studio
mean
as well.
Holly.
Oh, Holly.
Yeah, I think we've both. I think we've both dated Holly.
Yeah,
Nudge,
yeah.
You know what I mean?
You know what?
Possibly
okay.
at the same
I
time.
lose track of the name sometime.
Yeah,
but
it took me a
think
minute.
you're
It took me a
right.
minute to remember
Okay.
that name too.
Yeah.
In that connection, Hollywood also reported that because of this crisis here, that the Women's Tennis Federation bake sale has been canceled because it was going to be in Beijing. It sounds pretty like a half-baked idea to me, but some of these unused ingredients like flour and eggs and so forth, I guess they may get plugged in because of our supply chain issues. Now, I will tell you this, even though the government is not going to send anybody to the Olympics in next summer, we are going to be competing. For example, you have the men's auto repair team. I know some guys who are on that team or planning to be on that team. You have to audition for it. You also have to audition for the people who are going to be wrestling with guilt. That's a new event for this year, people wrestling with guilt, and they're advertising on the internet. We need people consumed with guilt to make it count by joining the team. I understand most of them are of one particular religious
Yeah, my sources tell me, boss, they're all essentially 99.9% of them are, of course, Catholics, because Catholics
who are riddled with guilt.
Riddled with guilt, yes.
Yeah, and then
And this is why.
But again, that ties back to guilty versus non-guilty being such a Western concept. I'm really having trouble getting my arms around that these days.
yeah.
Well, if you want to do it right, you're going to put at least 1,800 on guilt.
Yeah, I
Okay.
hear that's also the new villain in the Batman movie.
Boy, you guys always amaze me with your inside information. I guess before I leave this subject here, there's also a need for whistleblowers. That's another event. I don't think we had that last summer, but they don't want anybody blowing whistles here, just, around the Great Wall.
Speaking of whistleblowing, Hollywood, I think, would be an ace at that event.
Oh, you better believe it. I mean, she's a Hollywood. She's aptly named, if you know what I mean.
Speaking of females who have a reputation, we have Ghislaine Maxwell, who has been on trial, and she has excuses for almost everything, all right? So at the beginning of the trial, she was saying she could not pick out Mr. Epstein in a lineup. I think maybe the choices she was given might have something to do with that. But then when people started asking about, these retreats where young people would show up, she explained, and once again, Hollywood has the story. She explained that she was just a dishwasher at the Camp for Troubled Youth. And she may have lectured on rodeo culture, which, you know, a lot of the young people, I guess, are interested. But she changed her tune once again when the subject was grooming, and she said she did actually have a grooming business, but not what you think. In other words, we have a before and after here. That's what that slide was. This shows you what she said she could do with an ordinary looking person. She could groom them into something like an archetype, I suppose. Anyway.
Well, that's one sexy He-Man in that picture.
Or the
I
approximation.
mean, I don't float my boat in that direction, but I do admire that when I see it.
I must say I can tell talent when I see it, you know.
Can you pick it out of a lineup, though? You see, it's not measured in feet. It's usually measured in inches in a police lobby.
Yeah, you're right about that. I mean, that's I guilty as charged. Anyway, when she was finally pressed on the subject of, you know, these younger ladies that got into the orbit of the Lolita Express, she pointed out that Mr. Epstein actually liked older women.
This is entirely true, boss. In fact, turns out she had a whole separate recruitment service called Maxwell's Silver Grandmas. And, you know, the 70 and up crowd, turned out Epstein had a thing for them. Who knew?
Well, I didn't know until you said that. And we talked about this before the show, and you didn't even mention it then. I guess it's one of those sensitive issues you tell me about sometimes.
Well, it is, yeah, an ongoing investigation.
Okay, I mean, all of the cards haven't been turned over, so to speak. There's another interesting trial, Jussie Smollett, and his story, I mean, his story changed a lot too. But in the beginning, he was saying that he was attacked by 2 popes. And I don't know how this follows, but he says he later learned about ancient mysteries and popular web portals. Now, as for the ancient mysteries, Hugh, I suppose he's talking about things that they might be finding in Louisiana and Florida that are very old, because you can smell that.
Yeah, that's in fact, and of course I specialize in very old things, being very old myself. So I'm working. My next book, I think, will deal with this subject in more depth.
Okay.
In more depth, you said.
Well, that as well, yes. Bit of a Freudian slip there, I suppose, huh?
Well, speaking of Freud and his slips, one other thing Jussie said as things got more complicated, he said that there were 2 brothers involved, and he said that he paid them to mow his hair. Anyway, there's some people testifying before the January 6th investigation, or about to be testifying, who have raised the interest level, even for people who aren't that political. First, we had Mr. Mark Short, who actually worked for Vice President Pence. And what was his job? He was a food taster. This goes way back to ancient Rome, folks. You may remember food tasters, but in his case, he was often tasting cheeseburgers because, I guess because that's what was being served in the White House.
June, is that something, as you travel throughout the solar system, if not the galaxy, is there a specialty for people that taste alien foods? For instance, your Venus burgers?
Well, I do have a food taster myself, because you may find this hard to believe, but people have tried to poison me in the past. But, you know, if it doesn't kill you, it's a heck of a gig.
Well, this guy Short, he was also in the room with Trump when his ice cream melted. But that's a pretty complicated story. Another person who was up for January 6th was Jeffrey Clark. Of course, he went in saying he's going to take the fifth. It turns out he was taking a fifth of vodka specifically, and he didn't answer any questions about it. And now, Mark Meadows, of all people, who said he was going to testify before the committee, he changed his mind, apparently, or somebody changed it for him, because he talked about Trump's condition in his book. That condition, Trump's condition, I think, was an expanding waistline, but anyway.
Possibly caused by excessive consumption of lead meatballs?
Well, they go down pretty heavy, as we've said, and they have a long half-life, but that's why they're so good, right?
Indeed.
That's why they're so good.
Put out a quality product, boss.
And of course, Steve Bannon specifically said, I'm not coming. I won't testify. And he was turning things into a circus. And I mean a circus. His circus featured, among other things, and again, I'm relying on Hollywood for this story, a miniature giraffe, a tattooed furniture salesman, some nuns in bikinis, and trained air filters from Eastern Europe.
Boss, I got to tell you that image of the miniature giraffes and the nuns in bikinis, that's, I mean, my therapist is going to retire on that.
Yeah, I guess you'll be talking about that for some time. But now you don't have tattoos like the furniture salesman of legend.
Well, you never know, boss. You know, some things about me you may not know. So,
Well, that's-
you know, I
that's
mean,
why
if you want to attract nuns in bikinis, tattoos are one of the main. You have to put on the whole bad guy persona.
Right. It's a posture that you adopt.
I find plenty of use for tattoos. You know, they just run around the edge of the island bringing me Mai Tais.
He's so smart. Anyway, not everybody who's a Republican is being asked to testify on January 6th. Let's make that clear. But almost everyone who is a Republican is engaging in bad behavior. For example, you had Lauren Boebert really making some news lately. She was talking about an encounter on an elevator with a possible terrorist. And so she got pinned down by some people wanting to know, where was this elevator? And she said, well, I think I was on a commercial airliner. And so anyway, she hasn't been able to find this elevator that she says is where she encountered a terrorist.
There's another visual you get me on, boss, but Boebert being pinned down is just,
Yeah,
my mind is exploding. That's,
Yeah,
and,
well,
and not in a healthy, good way.
I'm quoting exactly what it said there in the Imaginary Event Journal. So it's not my choice of words. Anyway, other Republicans, let me talk about some other Republicans generally. They are now saying that they need AK-47s for their aides. I'm not sure.
Suddenly they're concerned about AIDS.
Well,
They're way behind the times, let me tell you.
well, you know, better late than never. Then you have people like Senator Massey. The reason that he is in hot water, if we want to use that turn of phrase, he recently shot down a reindeer posse, that's what he called it, that had some man in a red suit, and they were trying to land this sleigh on his roof. So he said, you know, self-defense. I mean, what choice did I have? Well, he had a lot of choices there.
God forbid they were trying to burn down his decorations.
Well, in 1931,
When I invented,
he started it, and as I remember, the reason that you were actually putting up all those lights was that you couldn't see in the house, and so
Well, actually, it's more. I was really trying to. Another way to attract nuns in bikinis was to have an ostentatious display of lighting in your house. So.
Okay, that explains a lot, as usual. But you know, speaking of attacking, airborne sleighs, NASA is planning to nudge an asteroid that's heading in this direction, I think. And that's interesting because they had a volunteer, it's a furniture salesman who has a bunch of colorful tattoos, and he is going to crash into the asteroid and hopefully return.
Now, let's just say, for example, I might know this particular furniture salesman. May not be his primary line of work, but, a living is a living. And he may just be, scouting out new real estate for an interplanetary mobile cafe.
Are we saying that Mattress Mac is branching out?
I could neither confirm nor deny this. That I know anything about this particular.
Okay.
Is it possible that it's actually the My Pillow guy, and he's just going to encase the asteroids in pillows, so it will make a soft landing?
He may or may not be an investor.
You're getting too technical for me.
Yeah, we may as well just drop the subject.
Let's just leave that where it is. Another Republican who was in Congress, and I'm talking about Mr. Nunez. He is leaving the fold. You see how I called it fold, like a pillow? Anyway, he's leaving the fold because he's now going to host a Donald Trump-focused TV show, internet channel, a book club. I mean, it's a massive empire, and it's called Believe It or Else. And he's, by the way, they're giving him a great phone plan and some new costumes. I think the Russian troop is selling them back to the vendor. I don't have. Anyway, that particular show was not always going to be called Believe It or Else.
I have my sources told me the original name was in his name only, with H capitalized to represent, of course, him.
The big man.
Yeah. The expanding waistline big man.
But that's not what you told me.
No, in fact, my intel told me it was supposed to be called You Bet Your Wife.
And you said you'd put money on that too.
Oh, I certainly will. And my wife, you know what I'm saying?
But you told me it was something else.
Yeah, Geppetto Investments was looking to call it something along the lines of "Don't Russia Me."
Don't rush me. I think I get it. I think I get it. Anyway, let's talk about politics in Texas here for a few minutes. First of all, because of all the gerrymandering, we're hearing that an issue in the next gubernatorial, how does that go? Gubernatorial race is maybe going to be an issue about black and brown voters. Now, I know about black voters, and I know about brown voters. I know who they are, but I am not familiar with black and brown voters.
They're adjacent to the Neapolitan voters. So there's somewhat pink ones, there's the white ones, and then there are those who sort of as a family or unit.
I guess you're saying you know one when you see one, then, huh?
The pink, brown,
On a
white.
spectrum, sort of like a police lineup.
Well, I mean, it's a demographic of sort of the all-in-one model of individual voting, suffrage.
Okay, suffrage.
And they can contain some chunkier elements if you kind of like disperse throughout the continuum of that precinct. You can
Rocky and chunky.
Yeah.
Yes, which are names.
Yeah, Rocky. I think the Rocky area is probably the one I would prefer to live in myself. But
Okay, everybody has their preferences, but anyway, the biggest thing going on in Texas is the possibility that we actually have a race for governor between a Republican and a Democrat, and I would be speaking about Beto O'Rourke. But Governor Abbott, on the advice of one Ted Cruz, has begun referring to Beto as Francis, which I guess that's his real name. He's calling himself Beto because he wants that vote, especially in the El Paso part of Texas.
Well, I relate to El Paso, and you know what? In El Paso, we say, build back Beto.
That theme, it's everywhere, isn't it? One other thing about the Texas election coming up. I'm pretty sure this is going to be an issue because there was a big article, a write-up in the Texas Mouthful just recently. It's concerning our power grid, and it was called Reality Winter. In other words, there have been some fines put in place for these utilities who do foolish things like not preparing for winter. Some of them might be fined as much as $250.
Wow.
Bucks, I mean, bucks, $250 if they don't get their act together. So we'll see. Winter is right around the corner.
Now, are they doing anything about the, I mean, I was told the source of the problem was there was a lot of angry squirrels that were deliberately committing terrorist attacks and bridging across the high transmission lines to short them out. Do we know if, perhaps that may not be one of my more reliable sources.
Where do you get these stories? I want to mention the Supreme Court, because we talk a lot about justice when we get into politics here. There has been discussion of changing the Supreme Court because of the way that it's headed, or wrong-headed, if you will. Suggestion number one was, let's expand and have an even number of justices. That would mean we would have more ties, but that idea never seemed to get much traction. And then another angle was, people said, once a justice is requiring adult diapers, then they probably are not going to be sanguine about some of the issues that affect all Americans. In other words...
It depends.
Yeah, it depends. But what I'm trying to get at is this. We have all of these problems with human frailty and human bias, and so the idea that is becoming very popular is to turn over some of these complicated legal decisions to artificial intelligence. So there's an article right now in the Journal of Dicey Political Issues. I like the title, Alexa, Siri, how do you vote on this one? And that's what could happen if we let the Supreme Court be taken over by people that are actually not people. See what I mean? Okay, another big issue going on right now. Chris Cuomo got fired from CNN, and you know why? For one thing, because his brother, who was allegedly the governor of New York, got in some trouble. So then eventually, Chris Cuomo said on one of his interviews, not an interview he did, but an interview where he was being interviewed, he said, well, I've spent all of this time reporting on bad behavior. It's about time that I engage in some myself. And he's not the only one doing that. Jack Dorsey, who is, he's the Twitter guy, he's resigning because of a lot of links on Twitter to disciplinary records. And I used to collect I collected those because that was like one style of punk music that I really respected, because it didn't respect anybody else.
In fact, you had your own label. Wasn't that Dysentery Records during that dry spell?
It was, but I usually don't talk about that while we're live on television.
I used to have an extensive collection of disciplinary records myself, but as part of the settlement agreement with the ex-wife, I was forced to give them away.
Right. I know about that story, and that's in your book. You called her an artifact, as I remember, but
Well, and considerably worse. But let's move on.
Let's
I don't want
move
to.
on.
I'm having
Supply-
enough trouble with back issues here tonight.
supply chain issues. You know, that's being talked about a lot lately, and I'll tell you what's curious about these supply chain issues. Really, a lot of things are being unloaded now from these container ships, but not all. Some of them that were anchored in the water aren't anymore because the anchors are being stolen. And
Just like Chris Wallace on CNN.
that's just like it. And I understand that Flesh Mobs, for example, just stole about 1,500 meatball sandwiches from the nuclear subway.
And you know, boss, that's another situation that could have been prevented with the use of Cronco lead-filled meatballs. It'd be way too hard to lift.
I guess that would solve the problem, wouldn't it?
But then that would introduce some lead into the ocean. But then we can
Well,
we
you
can start
know,
a joint venture to
We cross
clean
that bridge
up.
when we come to it.
Okay,
you know?
just a couple of more things here. One thing on the artistic front, you're hearing a lot about imposing travel bans. Well, I happen to manage one, the Autos. You may have heard that they have a new record. This is a traveling ban for sure, because these guys have been on the road for about 4 years. They haven't been home in 4 years. And NFTs, that's a big development. I myself, I'm going to make some big bucks here with non-fundable totems as soon as I figure out what they are, okay? And what are we going to give each other for Christmas? Well, one company that is advertising a lot has a lot of different names, but look at one of these things they're offering. If you want to be an environmental hero, you can get a chunk of the endangered rainforest, but as a practical matter, you get a 75th of an acre for $25,000, and from what I have been told by none other than Stand Up, this is a part of the rainforest that's already been denuded, pretty much. So you're not really saving anything. Now, this same company, they let you be a frontier justice hero. And what they are selling here is a big box of ammo for just about every device that you, weapon that you might have. And then they say you could be a soccer mom hero. I don't understand. This is an SUV that has a built-in VHS, which is, I suppose, so you can be retro. Anyway, those are some of the popular items that are selling a lot this Christmas. One that I like, this is a whistleblower-related item, available right now. Oh, I almost forgot about this. You can be a Green Gobbler hero, and I'm not sure, but this is if you eat a lot of salads and you don't eat meat, then you can be a grub.
How un-American is that? To eat salads and not meat? I mean, you can't
Not
have lead meatballs.
during the holidays. I don't understand it, but anyway, it's about elevating you to sainthood if you're not already there. So those are the ones I know about. If there's any other popular Christmas presents that y'all want to mention.
Well, you know, boss, we didn't want to. We kind of wanted to surprise you with this, but we got you a little token of your fabulous esteemage for in honor of your birthday and the end of the year, and we just thought you might appreciate. It's a cake.
And we got candles too.
It's festive, yeah. There you go, champ.
Well, I don't know what to say other than
I normally have someone open my candles for me, but
you don't have enough candles, I guess, for how old I really am now.
you're not the ancient relic that you.
Just an artifact.
Yeah.
Just an artifact.
And as a point of fact.
Yeah, we want to get a lot of these in there. We want it to be,
Festive.
nice and festive.
I think there have been some problems with Christmas trees lately. Some of the networks that have a lot more money than we do here.
Oh, I don't know what you're talking about, but I want to make sure we do this right.
All right. Hey, you need any more? You need a little
No, just give me,
tipple or
just give me one of those.
all right. There you go. Yeah.
Well, I think perhaps because you're not homeless, you're not really getting the hang of this here.
Just takes a little time.
I don't know what to say, but I hope that thing doesn't catch on fire.
Well, we'll see. We'll see what happens. We like
Hey,
to just kinda blow what the wind-
live a little, boss.
We gotta
Take some
try
chances.
to do a little
Yeah.
more effort here.
There you go.
Yeah.
There you go. All right. Yeah. When you're sparking, you know you're doing it right.
Well, everything I wanted for Christmas is right here in front of me now.
It's like a Charlie Brown Christmas. Birthday. Happy.
I must say, I am in awe of your generous spirit, and I hope it's contagious. I hope all the people out there who have electricity are going to do their best to keep everything charged up as we head for a new year, because when we do, I'm sure we'll be back. We're always coming back.
We'll be back.
Thank you so much.
Unless I'm on an asteroid, then I might not.
I like the earrings dangling from your lobes. I like the pumas on your new bathrobe. I like the purple hose you wear sometimes. I like nickels, not as much as. Excuse me while I talks to my accountant. I like the swordfish you keep in a tank. I like the T-bills you keep in a bank. I like the purple hose and purple shoes and Peter Jennings on the evening. Excuse me while I talks to my insurance agent. Get a load of this. I like the credit cards with which you charge. I like it when you order extra large. I like the purple hose you wear to school. I like it when you. Excuse me while I talk to my customer service representative. There he goes again. You notice how the wind cries, Merry Christmas? No? That's right, you told me you were